So it's the next day. That storm came in, and a lot of thunder and lightning, so I had to take everything inside. So have other complications here too with electric drill. Now as the spindle reload burns down, the lever pushes in, as you can see. So it goes from here to this way, and when it gets too far, it starts to create sidewall friction because of the angle of the cap. So what that tells me is the reload needs to be changed to the correct length again, because it's too short, so that the lever could stay at the proper distance. So what I have to do is take this out. Okay. Let's take it off the treadle, right? Just give me a minute. There we go. And take the elastics off, bungees. Okay. I won't have to take both off, but I will. And that frees up the lever. Now I'm going to push back on the lever, and we're going to release the spindle. Now, as you can see, it started to get that sphering effect, even though it has the dead space center taken out. Now, thank goodness at least that's taken out, because it would really really affect the friction process. However, such a large vacuum of space leaves the reverse nippling effect, which also, if you're not careful, affects the friction process. So let's take this out. We're going to look at our east and west. Oh, careful. Oh, there we go. We're going to look at our east and west notches. Now they got pretty full. You can see all the dust in there that fell down. There's some on the side, there and there, still stuck on there. So our notches on the side, which were covered for the containment. Now look at that, that's like perfect dust. Now on this side, that dust looks pretty perfect too. And you can see how the dust was contained in there. However, we had to stop, and because the reload got too short and the storm was blowing in, and I had to take everything inside. So I'm going to redo the spindle reload. We're going to redo the base, and but this time I'm only going to do an east notch, not an east and west notch. And then later we'll do a south notch, since you've already seen the north notch with the incantation drill. And but we're going to try a new spring pull method. Alright, here we go. Okay, so you just saw me take off the excess branches off a dead branch of the English walnut that's in my backyard. That's going to be our next example of a spring pull. Keep in mind too that if there are other branches, you can connect them together for more stored energy, like we did with the sumac. Okay. So I put in a new reload, a new spindle reload. So what we're going to do now, this is what I have, is this is yucca and this is sodal. Now I want you to see that I started the hole there. I have a box notch put in there to get to fit as much dust in there as I really can. Now I want you to see what I did here. I put 2 slits on the side here, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a containment wall for the dust. So what I'm going to do is I shoved a piece of jute in here, a really thick piece. Now I'm going to unwind it because it's wound, right? I'm going to unwind it to increase the surface area, make them all straight, put them across, and I'm going to fit that in the other slot if I can. Maybe I'll do one at a time. There we go. And that creates a wall as a containment wall to hold. Now what I need is my knife. Oops, wrong knife. And we're gonna cut the excess off so that it fits inside the space where the base goes in Alexa's drill. But although we're supposed to be doing the lathe drill, again, Alexa's drill is based on the lathe drill. Now this wall takes the place of when I'm using Alexa's drill. She has the little tiny reload spindle of bamboo. What I do is I hold this over the notch and it holds all the dust in, and that way I don't have to do something like this. I just stand there. Since I'm standing there anyway watching her do the method on her device there, I just hold the dust in for her, and then, you know, when I'm done, it comes right off and we can take the coal out. So we're the other thing too is, you notice the branch that I took off, the branch that I was working with just now on the English walnut is dead. So you have to be careful with live versus dead branches. You have to kind of know your trees and know which ones are going to be stronger than others. Again, you want a good bow wood, as in bow and arrow kind of wood, one that's very fibrous, one that's going to hold together. Now a live branch is going to have much more flex because it's green, versus a dead one, which may have a little bit more strength, but you have to be careful it's not so far gone that as you're pulling down on the cord, the branch actually breaks and falls on your head. Okay, so again, it's that health variable. You can't create a problem that's going to injure you or anyone else. So imagine you're showing this to a group and you have people standing under this branch, and if it breaks and falls off and hits people, that's going to be really bad. So your choices that you make while you're doing this could affect other people, so be careful. Now, since the branch is up in the air and hard to reach, if you're going to use that branch regularly, what you could do is have a rope, which you put a knot and a loop through, and you make a sliding knot. Okay, now you put this around the branch, and you would leave this rope hanging. Okay, leave this rope hanging so that you can grab the rope anytime to the branch, instead of having to climb and put this around the branch all the time. You just have to be careful that there aren't kids around to grab hold of the rope and pull on the branch and possibly break the branch and hurt themselves, or heaven forbid, anything worse. Okay, so let's get this set up and let's roll. So before we close up, I want to show you a far shot so you can see the whole process working. Now already it's starting to smoke. So let's close up in on the notch. And then what I'll try and do is immediately take it out once I'm done. See, it's pulling. It's drifting to the side. Alright. So I got to make these adjustments as you go. Well, that might have it. Let's take this out and have a look. You can see it drifted to the side. I'm going to have to redo this. So this is exactly what happens with toggle drill because you have a unilateral force. Here's a perfect example of that unilateral force. So this is a complication you'll run into. You can see it started here, right? And then it moved over. The whole notch moved over and barely anything collected in the notch. So this is why I said in the beginning, you have to line up the spring pole with the treadle as in a straight line from A to B as much as possible, because if you don't, this is what happens. So we're going to flip this around and redo everything and come right back with a better alignment from the branch spring pole and the treadle. Alright, here we go. So I have an additional complication underneath this branch of the English walnut, and that is the ground is actually sloped down this way. My backyard used to be a farmer's field, so it has a lot of tiny hills and valleys. So the Alexa's drill won't sit correctly, but I think I got it to a point where the treadle and the spring pole are lined up fairly correctly, but natural law will tell us through reward or penalty if it's correct or not. So let's hook this up again. Oh, I should show you my my new setup first. So as you can see, here's the old one down here, and I have this nail in here so that I could just pull out the base when it's finished. Again, I have a box notch with nothing in it. I got the two slits which have the piece of jute, which are used for containment for the east notch. Could be a west notch. I prefer east. So we put the yucca back to the sodal, and we apply our pressure. in the form of bungee cord. Okay. That looks pretty set. It looks like it's pretty good between A and B there. So let's give this a couple tests. Oh, that looks pretty smooth, and it looks pretty straight. Let's see what it looks like from afar. Okay. Looks good. Again, but now, the way I had it before, the branch was not over my head, but now it is over my head. In a way, I have to be watching above me to make sure that doesn't. Well, I'll be listening for a snap, and I'm sure you will too. But I think it's pretty sturdy. All right, here we go. Now, the axis on it doesn't look very straight, but it is turning nicely. And the top is getting really hot where my finger is. I mean, right through the wood, like really hot. You can see the jute strings actually starting to fray from burning. I'm going to stop for a minute. And I think we have our coal. So I'm going to carefully take everything apart. Yeah, look at that smoke. Okay, let's take that off. Let's pull this out. And there's our coal. I'm going to try and get it to glow. It's hard with the sun. There we go. And there's our east notch, held in place with the jute. It still drifted a little bit. It's hard to tell, but the hole drifted a little bit to the west again. And so there we go. Natural law, reward or penalty. Doesn't care if you live or die. You must balance all the variables for life and living. All right, let's do our next variations. Let's keep moving. So what we're going to do next is review a couple more examples of spring pole. How we're going to do these is, if you have a pillar type structure, like a tree, okay, now this is my pear tree in my backyard. You also notice that it has a bit of a crook in it. So one of the reasons why I chose this tree, because it has the crook in it, is because when this gets attached to the tree, it comes off on an angle automatically. Because if you have something straight up and down like this, like the sapling, you may be applying too much pressure already to get it to bend over before you're even started. Okay, so it might pull your treadle up too far, and you might not be able to compensate for that. So to get the angle already started, okay, and then have it start bending down, may be a little bit better for your setup. Okay. So when you're thinking spring pole, you should think bow, like bow and arrow. Now this is a small cedar sapling that was turned into a fish bow for fishing. And the way it's designed, and the string is too loose, but it's designed for what's called cast, and either both cast and snap. But the way this one goes is you have a very long arrow, and the tip of the arrow is practically in the water, and then you spear the fish. Okay. Well, that's what this is, this cedar bow. And as you can see, it already has a curve to it, but it's also very, very stiff. Okay, so it doesn't have a lot of give to it. So you have to be careful too when you're working the treadle, how much room you actually have available to use. Okay. So you may only have a few inches to be able to push your treadle down. Well, that's not going to give you a lot of rotation. So that's going to probably be pretty difficult. So you need to find something that has balance between having flexibility as well as strength, the expansion and the compression on the inside and the flex on the outside, and so it has to be able to give enough. So one of the things you may want to practice with is to get a kid's bow. Now this one is really small. They come in bigger sizes, but let's see, if we take the string off this, if I were to attach this to the tree, okay, now this one has a lot of flex, it's very strong, which means that the treadle can really move, and you're going to get a lot of rotation, okay, because you have a lot more distance, okay, whereas with the cedar one, a couple inches, you're not going to get much rotation at all. Okay, so when you're thinking spring pole, think bow and arrow. What I'm going to do is set up a couple examples here on the tree, on my pear tree, and we're not going to be doing a call. I just want you to see some more spring pole examples real quick. We're just going to move through this. Okay? Be right back. Alright, so it's important in your setup. Sorry about my air conditioning on the side here, making that hum. You have to anchor really 2 points if you're going to do this. The very bottom, okay, and where up above where it's going to bend. You can't just do one point, obviously. Okay. Now what I have holding this here are ratchet straps, like you would use to tie down things on your truck or your car. And so you should feel very free to experiment and practice with many different things, including, and here I'm using a different kind of example of how to secure something. Could I use rope? Yeah. Could I make my own cordage? Yeah. Could I do it that way if I wanted to? Yeah. But really, for the sake of demo and just moving things along, I'm just going to use these straps. Just like I would use hose clamps for my reload. I already know I could tie a stick to a tree. I already know that I could, secure a reload to the reloading spindle, which with cordage if I wanted to, and do it all myself. I've done all the primitive stuff, and really this is not only just to save time, but to experiment with different things. You have to free yourself to try different things, try new things, see how they work, or you're never going to grow. You can't just limit yourself. For example, the keep things only primitive ideology will actually can retard your growth in order to move along. It'll use up a lot of your time. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great thing, and it's basically preserving an art form, which is great. But we're here pushing the limits on a lot of things, trying new things, seeing how far we can go with something. So, for you Kung Fu enthusiasts, since this is a dojo, right? Although dojo in Chinese is Kwoon, if you practice Kung Fu or things like that. This is a pole of waxwood. Waxwood is one of the famous staff woods that they use in Chinese arts for the bow flexible staff or the spear, which I'm going to show you. So here, so we have the bottom and this part secure. One of the things you also have to be careful of is that this doesn't slop around, okay? So you would secure the bottom, but just keep that in mind. So here we have some good flexibility. We have a good range of motion, okay? And that's very important for rotation. You're not going to get any rotation if you just have a really short stroke just like that, with that cedar bow. So here we're going to get a lot of good flex, okay? And that'll work really well. So let's change this to another waxwood pole. And this is my waxwood spear. As you can see, it has the tassel on it. Let me back up here. And basically we're doing this for dramatic effect, because this is a dojo. And there we go. We would tie this to our lathe drill, and we would have our spring pole. So this is my waxwood spear. A lot of good range, okay? So that treadle can really work. So if this is on your treadle, it's going to have a lot of good rotation. Okay, let me set up for another one. Now here in this one, I have a very large rattan. And here, to secure it at the bottom, it goes all the way to the base of the tree. This one's going to have a lot of good range of motion. So basically, these principles are also what you would learn from when you do trapping. So this would be what's called a spring snare. Okay. So this would be set down on the ground. The trigger would be down here, and then you would have your loop or your bait off the trigger. And once the animal pulls on the bait with the loop around its neck, or something like that, or even fishing, you can do it by fishing too. It hits the trigger, that releases, and that pulls the animal or the fish up in the air. But here it's connected to the treadle. I have to secure that better. And a lot of good flex, so that's a real good one too. Now I'm going to show you another variation of the spring pole. Well, what if you don't have what seems like a good sapling? What if only what you really have is a bunch of branches? Okay. For example, these branches which came off my pear tree after I trimmed it about a month ago. You can see the leaves are all brown. Well, in some native cultures, and I think it's South America, maybe. Central America? Maybe Central America. They put together a bow with multiple pieces like this. So what you would do is you take these branches that you see here and you lash them all together. Now I've taken remember way back when I was talking about hand drill, and you should get maybe your supply of bamboo from the hardware store. Well, these are some bamboo stakes gotten at the hardware store that were too thin for hand drill use. And as you can see, they're about 6 foot tall, since I'm 5'6", and they're all lashed together with a cord. And I was saying some native cultures will make a bow like this. So they'll string this and they'll use this as a bow. But in this instance, I'm going to use it as a spring pole. Let me get that in frame for us. And as you can see, it has a lot of range of motion. The bamboo here is very flexible. It's more flexible than it is strong. I mean, you may need either more bamboo to make it stiffer, stronger, okay? Because this one is a little too flexible. And it may not be able to provide the necessary energy, power, to be able to turn the spindle. So, but you would have to balance that out with the materials that you have, okay? So this would be connected to your treadle, and there would be your spring pole. Okay, let's do one more last spring pole example, and we're going to move on. Sorry, I didn't realize the battery died. But this is the structure that I was trying to finish. And this is a usual setup for primitive lathes. For people who do primitive lathes, and they need a portable spring pole. So how this is set up is you have a very large Y branch, kind of like a wishbone. Looks like a wishbone. Very large branch, comes off a tree, and that's the base. So, and then I have a crossbar here because this is two bamboo poles lashed together. So it's not a Y branch, a wishbone branch. So therefore I have the cross brace. The cross brace also, though, supports these two braces, which as you can see are in an X, and what they do is they support the spring pole. Okay, now the base of the spring pole sits in the Y area, the wishbone area, and then we get this set up in sort of a triangle, and we lash that down with some more primitive duct tape. Now again, we're not going by the primitive ideology. This, as a dojo, we're both modern and primitive. And there we go. Let me just test the shot here. Okay. Now this is made entirely of bamboo, duct tape, and the spring pole is rattan. Okay, the bamboo is probably going to be, will probably crack on you. It'll probably just, remember, bamboo is like a straw, with the straw principle. You can pop it through an apple, because if it goes straight, the walls are very strong. But otherwise you get, if you remember from the hand drill, you get the take ori effect, or breaking the bamboo effect, right? So bamboo is not strong sideways, it's only strong straight. So don't use bamboo as a spring pole. So we're going to use rattan. Okay. So this would be a Y branch, which is very heavy, and usually that's enough weight where that won't go anywhere. However, something this light, although it's very transportable, you would want to anchor it down. Okay. And there's our spring pole. Okay. Okay. So you can anchor that down with rocks, logs. Put the stakes in like we do when we pin a board. Okay, many things you could do to anchor that down if you don't have the large, heavy Y branch. All right. And for now, this is going to be our last spring pole example. So we're just going to keep moving on with the lathe drill, and hope you enjoy. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so just got done showing you the variations of the spring pole. So our next one is going to be back on the actual lathe drill, and our first energy transference device technique is going to be a weight, a hanging weight. Okay, now it's very hard to do this primitively, so we have here pulley system. Okay, so this is hanging by one of the beams by this pulley. The cord goes this way to a middle beam. Okay, and the cord goes down to the lathing piece, the lathing spindle, the reloading spindle. Here we have the dogwood with a 3/4 inch reload with a reload of dogwood itself, okay, inside a base of dogwood. Okay, so dogwood reload and dogwood base. So dogwood on dogwood, male, female, okay, with the dogwood reloading spindle. And the cord goes down to the treadle on the bottom. Okay. So this requires a bit of technique on my fire dojo. I have to hold the cord, because here where this middle pulley is lined up, it touches this bar. So what I have to do is kind of pull on it. But what I need to do too is kind of clear it by giving it a bit of a tug to just make sure the system works a little smoothly, but you'll see. Okay, so here we have the lever here, which provides the class 2 lever. Here I have weights on top resting in here. Alright, now what we're doing right now is we're just burning this in. We're mating the reload to the reloading base reload. Okay, as you can see, that is nailed in there, otherwise it would be loose and it would go flying. Okay, the base, because it would be pulled out, ripped out by the forces of the cord. Alright, so the brace end sits here inside the copper cap. It is lubricated with a little bit of linseed oil. And so I'm going to put the camera on the stand, and we're going to get this going. So first I'm going to show you back here how this goes. I'm going to flip the camera on its side, so give me a second. So you can get the whole view of everything happening. Alright. And here we go. So I pull this to clear it from the bar. Okay. As I step on the treadle, I see the weight going up and down. I'm stepping on the treadle. So I'm not pulling this with my hand, I'm just clearing the bar by pulling on the cord a little bit. And the spindle's moving fairly nicely. So I'm going to increase the speed a little bit. And we're getting a little bit of smoke. Alright, so I think that's good for a demonstration. What we're going to do is we're going to do other energy transference devices and just kind of get us a call along the way. Okay? So let me take this off and just show you here where it is now mated. As you can see, all the dust around the base from previously before there was none. Alright, so let's do some more energy transference devices. Alright, so another way to do this is Egyptian drill style. Okay, so as you can see, it's wrapped around several times with a sturdy, not very flexible bow. And what we do is we lift the lever and put that in. You can hear that it's starting to rain. Put the drill in. Okay. And we need some weight, so we're going to put our weights on top. Hold that in. Okay. And oops. I think it needs to be wrapped around one more time. So let's do that. Make that really tight. heavier weight too. Put that one in there. Put that one in there. Get this cord to straighten out a little bit. It's just a hair short. Where we would like it. There we go. And this is called the bow lathe. And this is an actual technique used as a lathe. If you go on the internet and you Google or, search for a bow lathe, you might see a guy, maybe in Morocco or something like that, carving chess pieces with something like this. And what he does is, one hand is using the bow to turn the spindle, and his foot, his toes, are guiding the lathe tools to carve chess pieces. So this is the bow lathe. Now, when I first created this device that you see here on the table, when I first wanted to test it, the first way I tested it was with toggles. Okay, and you can see that actually from the pictures. And again, I just put a knot in my cord. So let's quickly wrap this around a number of times. And let's put that back in to our lathe. So let's put our weights on top. Okay. And again, this is how I originally tested my drill. Oh, there we go. You probably see all the smoke pouring out of that. This one is a really powerful way of doing it. Alright. So those are two more. Now we're going to do another two. And so what I'm going to do is put a notch in the base and change the angle of the camera. And I'm going to show you two more energy transfer devices, techniques. And let's get this thing lit. Alright, be right back. Alright, so we're going to do 2 more devices. Now I've put a notch in the reloading base, okay, and as you can see, because it is horizontal, I need to hold the coal dust in with some kind of containment barrier, like we did in the incantation drill, right? And in Alexa's drill, I had a little piece of wood which I was holding in front of the notch. That's what that is. So here I'm holding it with some artificial sinew or wax nylon, and this is going to fit in our reloading base area. Okay. Now the cord is attached to the treadle already, so I'm going to put the spindle in place. Now, what are going to be our 2 energy transfer devices? Well, let's take the camera and let's go up here. There are 2, and one is modern. Now this is the idea from the Alexa's drill, and this is bungee cords. So there's 3 here, as you can see, and they're connected to an eye screw on both sides. Okay, and that'll be connected here. And actually that idea comes from this one, which is an actual bow tied to a beam, which if it was in a workshop would be on the ceiling. And here the bow applies the tension. Okay, so here the cord is attached to the spindle already, so I'm going to pull on the cord, and we're going to do the modern one first. So we're going to put this around the bungee cords, and we're going to, let me put the camera down. Clip that in. Okay. So now I need to put the weights on top. So we're going to start with 4 kilos plus 6.5 kilos. Comes to 10.5 kilos. Okay. And I have an audience here, as you can see. So first, let's do a couple ones to get this started. I'm only stepping on the treadle. I'm starting to smoke, so let's close up in a little bit on the reloading base. Okay. Now this is definitely a harder wood. It is dogwood, so this is going to take a lot of extra time. Again, the energy transfer device and the treadle are lined up in as straight a line as possible between A and B. The spindle lies between A and B. Okay, so that's the bungee cord. Let's get some of that in the video. All right, ready? Hold on one second. I see that light is pretty annoying. All right, ready? And that's what that looks like. Okay, so let's change it over to the bow. Now, sometimes this is called a bow and bobbin. Now, you know, when you sew by hand, the thread comes off a spool. Well, spool is also called like a bobbin. And they would have some kind of wooden spool here, which the cord was tied around for better efficiency and to save on the cord as well. So here's the bow in action. Working with the treadle. Okay. Now let's get back to the spindle. You can see that's working well. Now I'm going to flip the light back on. Let's see if this light goes on too. Oh, there we go. Good. So we got plenty of light now. Now, I'm going to add a little bit of weight to the front, so it's a little heavier. Okay. Now I got to get this worn back up. Let's close in up on the base, reload. It's like walking and chewing gum at the same time. I have to operate the camera and step on the treadle at the same time. I'm going to increase speed. Base is a little loose, so I'm just holding on to it. Oh. That lever gave up a little bit. Keep going. It's pretty hot with my fingers on it. I don't know if I have a cold, but I'm going to keep going. I don't want it to cool down. Oh, I'm having a technical difficulty there. My reloading spindle came loose, look. See it? See, the reloading spindle is not moving. Okay, let me fix that. Let me come back. Okay, I had some complications, but I had to make some changes. My dogwood reloading spindle seems to have if you probably saw, has a little bit of a bend in it for some reason. I think it's drawing still, because I had mentioned before that I had cut it green a couple months ago. It still might be drawing. So I'm using my oak spindle. I had to obviously cut down and shoulder the reload of the dogwood. It's still dogwood. And what I forgot to mention was it was already hollowed, I think. I think I might have mentioned it. Again, it's a real hardwood. So you want to get rid of, the harder it is, the more you want to get rid of the dead space center, because that's really going to mess things up. I flattened it while I was at it. Okay, I shouldered it so that it's going to fit in there just like that. Alright, so what I'm going to do is tighten this down, get this back on the lathe drill, and get going. Be right back. Okay, so here's our reloading base, and I've left the dust in there. Okay, you can see it's not smoking. Alright, and so what I'm going to do is, just so you can see that before I get started, let's wrap this up, pull up on the treadle. Turns. Let's get this back in the side. Now the oak, as you can see, is a little longer, so the lever is a little higher. Okay. So now my weights are going to sit like they did before, just like that. Okay. Now let's see if we can't get this started here. Now it has to mate again because I flattened the reloading spindle. Well, spindle reload. So I have to get all this mated again. So you know what I'm going to do? I got to take this heavy weight off. And I'm just going to hold the lever for now. Right. You can see it's smoking again. I'm going to put a lighter weight on and warm it up with that. You know what I need to do? What I need to do is put a couple more turns of cord around the spindle. So let me do that carefully. I need to get the tension just right. Careful, okay. So I'm going to wind this down and then put 2 more wraps around, and then put it back on the lever with a 4 kilo weight, and let's try that again. Get a little stuck. There we go. Alright, let's just keep going. Let me close up in there. Oh, really pouring out now. Still have to keep a long stroke. Use the whole treadle if you can. Alright, let's have a look. That looks like a coal to me. That's a lot of dust too. Let's see you glow. Let's glow. Wow, that's huge. So there we go. Dogwood on dogwood. Cornice on cornice. Spindle and base. With the lathe drill. And that was the bow version. Okay. Alright. And now we're going to go on to epimethei. Be right back. Alright, so that's the lathe drill. I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope it was educational. So, again, this being a dojo, right? And our lineage coming from a lot of schools of thought, including the Bujinkan, the training hall of the warrior spirit that I train in. In our Bujinkan history is a volume that was written called the Bansen Shukai. And that's a rough translation of that is like 10,000 rivers collect into the sea. And if you could just picture that image, all of these creeks, which become, rivers, which all flow into giant rivers, which flow into the seas and into the ocean. Well, in a way, it's a lot like a huge collection. What it is a huge collection of knowledge of like philosophy, military strategy, warfare, some weapons things. And it was written in this, I believe, the 16th century, if I can recall. And but really it's the working title that I'm really interested in kind of explaining, in that if you actually read that backwards, okay, so from one thing, 10,000 things can flow from that as well. So, I mean, not exactly upstream, although sometimes when you're learning it feels like you're going upstream. But as much as there could be a collection going into one thing, once you learn one thing, from that you can expand and go on from there. So as I had mentioned way earlier in all that front loading talk, before we actually got into the friction fire methods, I had mentioned that we're dealing with variables. So again, most people start with structure and function, okay? Really that duality. But in between that duality is the stuff that really creates both of those. So variables, which lie in between, are endless. So once you start learning structures and knowing what they're for, okay, once you see what it is and then you understand why it is, then you learn all these different things of like how they can be, right? The variables are like how. So again, its structure is what is it, or what is this? function is, what does this mean? And the variables in between are how both of those happen, okay, in this physical world. All right, so here, from one concept, you can have so many variations, is really what I'm getting to. So in martial arts, we do one technique, and it breaks down from one waza to many different kinds of wazas. We do a henka, if you can remember that word, henka, which is variation in Japanese. So we do henka on henka on henka. We do variation on variation on variation, and you just keep going with that. You keep going, you keep playing, and that's what keeps it fun. So here we did the lathe drill, and we started from the original structure and function of the spring pole lathe, or also the lathe. And from then we went on to a different variation of energy transference, and another, and another, and another. And you can keep on going. We could change the spindle and the base reloads. We could change the specifics of the lathe drill itself. There's so much we could do. And you just go on and on and on. All right. Well, the next letters are M, mouth drill, which we've already done. And so next one up is N, the nano drill, which you're going to find a little fun. Okay? All right. Let's keep going. Enjoy.